This landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Good afternoon, good evening, my friends. I am Erica Lukes, happy to be here on the best network on the planet, KCOR, and happy to see that we've got a brand new chat room in there. All my friends are there, the usual suspects, David Cook from Over the Pond and Jeff Cox, Northern UFOs, all of you, thank you for getting in there, and thank you for spreading the word about UFO Classified. I love what I do, and I spend many hours a week researching my guests, the particular topics that they study, and I try to bring you people that I feel have good information on the subject. And, every once in a while I might bring somebody on that you guys might find a bit questionable, but I just encourage you to learn, to sit back, to listen, to watch, to observe, especially when it comes to the UFO community. Now, you've heard me talk about this before because there is so much dysfunction in this field, and that is truly unfortunate when all of us are here to try to make a difference, to try to learn, to try to push research forward. And we get involved because we're trying to find answers for our own personal sightings, sometimes with organizations or researchers that are not necessarily in this for the right reasons. And as you've heard me again talk about before, I did that with an organization. And when I first started that organization, I was absolutely gung-ho. And if you know one thing about me, you know that I dive into something and I'm going to do it and I'm going to get in there and make change. And that was my goal when I became MUFON Utah State Director. I believed that I could make a difference, and the people I met along the way were absolutely wonderful. I found friends like Ruben Uriarte, who will be on my show next week, and Jeff Cox, my assistant state director, who also resigned with me, but people, Jim and Stacy from Phoenix, all of these people who are really working hard to make this organization great and to expose people to this subject. With that said, we know that there is pretty significant dysfunction with leadership, and right now, unfortunately for MUFON, they are embroiled in yet another political scandal, nightmare, and they have once again kind of chosen to, instead of addressing issues the way that they should be addressed, which is taking responsibility and stepping up and doing the right thing. Again, we have some interesting statements coming from headquarters where instead of taking responsibility like a good leader should, they kind of push it back on the people on Facebook, who are like Ryan Sprague, who are stepping up, who have the courage to call out behavior, which we need to do. And I think that now is the time when a lot of different people from all over the world are looking at the organization and saying, wait a minute, they're not exactly what they claim to be. They're not necessarily in this for the betterment of mankind, to expand knowledge. And I think that is apparent. It's becoming more apparent by the day. And that is most unfortunate for the people who work tirelessly, volunteer for the organization, And I hope that at some point in time these issues can be addressed, but I feel with current leadership and the director of communications, those things will not be properly addressed. They'll be addressed when things are thrust into the spotlight and it looks bad for them, but they won't be addressed like they need to be, which is behind the scenes. I have said this many a time, and I will keep saying this because this is my mantra. When we are in this field and we are dedicating time and resources to this, when we are spending time away from our families, away from our jobs and friends, and doing this for, who knows what, we deserve to be in a field that has ethical and professional standards. End of story. It is up to organizations, especially the largest volunteer organization in the world, to set standards, to enforce ethical guidelines. I know from my own personal experience that there were a number of complaints that have been waged by other people, especially with regard to this latest controversy, very, very serious claims. And for whatever reason, again, on a very broad spectrum, the headquarters is not choosing to address these issues. There are issues, comments that people have made, and a lot of talk about sexual harassment, bullying, which I experienced myself, and now the latest debacle, which is the very racial and derogatory comments made by John Venturi, which have really caused a lot of people to raise their eyebrows. I think that we need to keep asking questions. I think we need to keep using social media because it is a great tool when used effectively. I also think that we need to work together to call this out. And I want to just throw this out there to the people that I see in there on Ryan Sprague's post or posting under Jan Harzan's comments on the MUFON page. Those people who are trying to defend that type of poor leadership. I hope that you, at some point in time, stop drinking the Kool-Aid, and I hope you choose to address this issue and demand more from the leaders of your organization and to the MUFON Board of Directors. I hope that you start digging around and get information from people other than HQ, and I hope that you can all make a change and be effective leaders, and we can all do this together. But right now, I have got a friend of mine on the phone, and he's graciously called from Hawaii. And I think that, Ted Roe is the executive director of NARCAP, and he also understands how to be an effective leader of an organization. And we've had great conversations at length about some of the pitfalls that we see in this field and also the lack of effective leadership skills and getting this information out to the public. So, Ted, thank you. How's it going?
Aloha,
how are you
everybody.
doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just great. I'm just having a nice time. I'm sitting out at Laupahoehoe Point here, and it's kind of a beautiful, partly cloudy, 79-degree day.
Oh, I am so jealous. It's really cold here in Utah, I have to say. It's just, but I'm ready to get my telescope out, but no love tonight. But you no doubt heard me talk about, this new issue with the racial comments made by somebody who is the state director. And I want to just run this by you. The typical MO from MUFON, from leadership of MUFON, is when people are, they make comments like this, the biggest excuse for them is, well, it's a volunteer organization. We can't control other public representatives' behavior. And to me, that is the biggest cop-out on the planet. There is not an organization, non-for-profit, or a respectable organization in the country that does not have guidelines for their representatives. How do you feel about that?
Well, of course, I agree with you. I'm a big fan of having a very singular point of contact, so that media and everybody only deals with one individual or one office within an organization. That way you don't have directors speaking out of turn. never mind voicing things that are unpopular. That way you control your message much tighter. And again, this excuse that you don't want to rock the boat, you're dealing with volunteers, whatever. I'm not going to second guess Jan really in terms of his management style, but I would say in my own situation, if it was on my table, I would certainly rock the boat. Sometimes leadership's called for. Somebody has to step in and take control and guide the process, particularly along an ethical track, or the organization will go off the rails. And that's kind of what it looks like from externally here. It's not a good public relations situation at all. And that's a problem, as an organization, you can be either reactive. In other words, you can have these things cropping up all the time and be in a reaction mode and literally stuttering for the words that you need to take care of them. I think like we saw in that poor man on the airplane that got dragged down the aisle there, and the damage that the public relations debacle that turned out being because they didn't own it immediately and be responsible for it. And even further, they didn't have protocols in place to keep it from happening to begin with. And they very well could have, So this is kind of a problem. You can either be in a reactionary mode or a proactive mode, and you can get out of reactionary mode by simply turning around and saying, okay, this stops right here. I'm going to make an example out of one of you, and who's next? We're not going to have this in our organization going this way. And ethically, your own ethics should be strong enough for you to say that and mean it in a way that if the organization doesn't come along with you, you're leaving because it's not ethical. It's not appropriate. You're committed to your standards of how your organization should function and represent itself. And EXO really needs to have a strong capacity, when he does make a statement. And I'm kind of not seeing that here. And maybe Jan's going to pull out something here in a bit, but I wouldn't have done it this way.
No, and I think that it seems to be, I understand that it's really messy to try to deal with this many personalities, this many frail egos, what have you, and it's a challenge. And I get that. I get it's incredibly difficult to run a non-for-profit, as you know. But I also think that when the morale is weakened in an organization, when people feel like they're volunteering and they're out of touch with others and they're not being heard, or worse yet, they're being there are allegations of sexual harassment or bullying or racism, you got a problem there. And clearly the problem is you're not putting out there or enforcing standards that should be set for every person that is volunteering for the organization.
Well, I agree, and I kind of look at it like the XO is the executive officer is the spine of the organization. The buck stops with him. All of the excuses and recriminations stop with him. And so, I mean, he's finally accountable. He's the last word on everything. So, it's really actually an empowering position if you know how to use it. And I've been in some very interesting power position plays behind the scenes in my own organization dealing with situations that would probably surprise some people. And it was simply the fact that, I simply just laid down my perspective and stuck by it, that the process moved forward. And in situations where I literally had to be a little intimidating in the process, I did it. It was my job. I felt I was responsible. I needed to make sure that action happened in a certain way, and I pushed it that way. I made sure that it went that way. It had to go that way. As an XO, it's my job to be right. And so if I turn around and I tell my organization, all right, I'm seeing sexism here, and it seems to be coming from over there, and it better stop. Okay, before I do not want to end up in a court situation. I want this cleaned up now. And if that means I have to let some people go, find some new talent, then maybe that's what needs to happen. Versus the other alternative, which is kind of but that's not dynamic. Your organization isn't responsive that way. It isn't gonna you're always going to be in front of the eight ball, when bad things happen.
Absolutely. And, again, I think that this is an unfortunate situation, and I invite the communications director, Roger Marsh, or Jan Harzan to respond on the show with regard to this. I'm sure people would love to hear more from them. I'm going to read after the comments made on social media by one of the state directors, John Bentry. There was a big uproar in the community on social media, and questions were asked by people that I really respect. And the response that I'm going to read to you, MUFON's reaction to the recent social media postings. And this is from Executive Director Jan Harzan. Any national organization striving for excellence does not want to be embroiled in its members' personal social media life, especially when it involves sensitive issues like politics, race, and religion. Okay, so I just have to stop right there and let's analyze that for a moment. Any organization or employer looks very carefully at what its employee or volunteer does on social media. And for anyone to brush that off, that's completely up in the night. That is something that is very telling. And many, many employers take that seriously. So I'm not quite sure where that's going. It continues
it's definitely counterintuitive. It's definitely counterintuitive, Erica. That's, because image management, organizations do everything they can to control their image. And if anything, they're accused of going too far into people's private lives to do that. And I can understand how Jan might want to respect that boundary a little bit, but you're accountable. I've been accountable for things I didn't say, and you've got to be there for it,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to I'm just going to finish this really quick because it gets better. The past year, it has been nearly impossible to take a public stand for a presidential candidate without a spontaneous outpour of vicious jabs and sneers from the other side. This, in many ways, is a symptom of the new social media world we now live in, where everyone wants to express their opinion, quickly followed by those who oppose it, sending their hate posts to the world. Who is worse, the person posting or the haters hating? If you need further evidence of this, just watch the nightly news, where depending on which channel you watch, people line up behind one side of an issue or another and then begin yelling at each other. It was recently brought to my attention that one of our volunteers had posted a comment on their personal Facebook page that many found offensive. It is not MUFON's place to monitor our members and volunteers' social media sites and become the judge, jury, and executioner based on whether we agree or disagree with personal posting. This incident did, however, bring to our attention some internal opportunities to update our process and procedures regarding the use of social media by our volunteers and staff, and this work is currently underway. Finally, it is okay to disagree with others, but let's challenge ourselves to dialogue with that person to first understand their rationale for their opinion they are stating, and then begin a discussion with them on a subject, for only through dialogue and discussion do we advance as a civilization. We all need to be building each other up rather than tearing each other down. There is no justice in hate, no matter what side of the fence you're on. On that, we can all agree.
Well, there is the problem, as he points out, of what people would say on their personal page and whether or not that's their own territory or whether that continues to represent your organization. I would say that the response to it seems to fall on the side that it continues to represent your organization. Whether you're on a personal page or not, the de facto situation is that that person is linked to MUFON, and people are connecting that to MUFON. And as much as, we would like to see these boundaries a little bit crisper between us and, I'd like to be able to say things on Facebook that are personal or rhetorical and not find myself confronted by them later, but the de facto situation is I will be. So knowing that, I have to tailor my behavior accordingly, and I think that as an organization, you kind of have to, roll the hard six on this one too, because it's counterintuitive. The reality of it is that it's doing damage to your organization. And as much as you'd like to not have it do damage to your organization and say that you respect the boundaries of others, this is showing you where the boundaries actually are.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and then this is, like I said, this is kind of a typical approach of brushing things under the rug, and the only time that action is really taken is when they're looking, poorly, and even at best, it's minimal action. And so we'll just see what happens. I know in my case and a few other people that I've spoken with, nothing has been done. And I would ask, honestly, what are the protocols when people complain, when people voice concerns? How seriously is this taken, and how many complaints does somebody have to have before the issue is addressed?
Well, many companies have addressed that rather directly in a standards and practices manual, and it does have issues of grievances and how they're expected to be managed. And this is a situation where a lot of organizations take advantage of it and throw an arbitration clause in their a mediation clause in their work contract, so that you will agree to sit in mediation rather than go to court if certain problems come up, which is different than saying that they won't do anything or just telling you nothing, So I think a well-organized organization would have those protocols in place, and it wouldn't be a matter of a question. You would know where to go to get the answer.
Absolutely.
And it's all about organization and management and what the administrative team is thinking about.
Absolutely. And I want to say, some of you who are listening, because I always talk about really interesting research. This is important because we are dominated by people in a field who don't necessarily understand how to run a business, how to behave ethically, and how to have professional standards. And that in and of itself really devalues the work that all of us who are trying to accomplish something do. And it must be addressed, especially when organizations give the field a bad reputation, and I could go on and on about that, which unfortunately we're going to a break, but I think these are important things to address. And I want to say that I'm really proud of Brian Sprague and many others who have come forward and tried to hold people accountable. That's important. We have to do that. This subject is too important, and it is critical that we bring in a new generation and do it with integrity. America Luke's Ted Roe is joining me, and Christopher O'Brien will be up in a little bit. We will be right back.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. Bowl for Life is a non-profit organization founded in 2013 by Chuck Gardner with one simple goal: to grow the sport of bowling worldwide. Over the years, Bowl for Life has given out thousands of dollars in scholarships to youth bowlers around the world. Our focus is to nurture integrity, honesty, professionalism, as well as respect into bowlers both young and old. You can help us by going to bowlforlife.com. Even the smallest donation goes a long way to breaking down the barriers and helping us assist people of all ages to improve their skills as well as knowledge of the game. Bowl for Life is happy to be partnered with other great organizations like the Youth Education Services Fund, as well as the United States Bowling Congress, with many spectacular integrated events planned in the near future. To learn more, go to bowlforlife.com. That's bowlforlife.com.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
What if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis Coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
I'm jumping in with my clothes on.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Are we still there?
Yeah, we're still.
Hi.
Back. We're back. It's me. Again.
He gets so upset.
I do. You know why? Because I don't have enough controls, and I need more. I need bigger. I need more control of everything.
I need more control.
We have ways of making you talk.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
America's favorite
radio station
just keeps getting better.
Hello, people. Aaron Hunter here, host of the show Real Paranormal Activity, where we tell the true stories of the paranormal from people like you. We also interview authors, mediums, psychics, and investigators as we dive headfirst into the murky waters of the paranormal. We discuss subject matters such as orbs, shadow people, paganism, the occult, and the demonic. Join me on Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, here at KCOR Digital Radio Network.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Good evening, my friends. I'm Erica Lukes. This is UFO Classified, and I am very happy to be here live. I missed you all last week. I was out and about doing things, but I know that you are all here in chat, and thanks for being such loyal supporters of the show. I really appreciate that. And if you are so inclined, you can go to UFOclassified.com and donate to the show because, you know, any help is great. I have spent the past 2 years spending money recording shows, producing them, and getting them out there free of charge so you can have good information. And sometimes, you know, sometimes donations are good. That's all I'm saying. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I want to go back to, and I'm joined with a friend and colleague whom I respect a great deal. Ted Roe is with me, and he is the executive director of NARCAP, and he also has some new projects in the pipeline. But we were talking a bit before we left off about the latest MUFON PR debacle, in which John Ventry on his Facebook page made some very racist comments, and that was taken to heart by a few people who could understand that that is not an appropriate way to behave for somebody who's representing an organization or in any other, you know, manner, so to speak. And I read Jan Harzan, the executive director's statement that he was posting on MUFON.com with his response to all of this. And it was a very interesting statement. I encourage you to go on there, MUFON.com, and read the statement, because it was, again, typical in fashion, where it was kind of spinning this yarn to throw things back at the other person's face and not directly taking responsibility for the actions of a public figure in the organization. And to me, that is definitely not what a good leader should do. I also want to encourage you to read the people like Lon Strickland, Ryan Sprague, different people, Greg Bishop, people that are Lauren Cutts who are commenting, making great comments and calling MUFON out on the carpet. Roger Marsh has said that they decided to pull their books out of the MUFON store and that he's not speaking at the conference, but not addressing the fact as to, whether he's still in a state leadership position. So we can only assume that, once again, it's a slap on the wrist and no clear and decisive action is going to be taken, which is, again, typical standard. I want to say that when we are all trying to make a change, when we're all trying to get this topic taken seriously, to continually have this kind of behavior from researchers, from organizations, is shameful. And I'm really happy that there are a group of you out there that have enough courage to call this kind of behavior out. And let's keep doing that. Let's make a change. Let's make a safe place for a younger generation to enter and get good information. And I know that Ted Roe, you agree with that, because we are definitely seeing we're not engaging a younger generation.
Well, that's true. There are a lot of people that don't see MUFON as the logical direction to go in when they come into this field. In fact, a lot of them are just not getting it all. And the ones that are of a type that I don't think we've ever seen before. They're a new type of researcher that are, they've either been very stimulated by what they've seen directly themselves or by what the research already has shown them from instrumented studies. And they're very motivated to get their cameras and get their materials and go out and document. And those people really, they're underrepresented, and the organizations that exist at this point don't really cater to them.
And that is exactly, that's a brilliant comment. And again, you and I have had many long conversations about this. If, in my opinion, if an organization is trying to research this, well, they'd be analyzing their data. That goes without saying. And they wouldn't be sitting behind a computer. They would analyze the data, figure out where recurrent things are taking place, and then they would get instruments out in the field to collect data. And for some reason, that doesn't seem to be happening. And maybe that is an older generation thing. Maybe it's the good old boys club at MUFON. I don't know. But I think it is exciting that we have people like Dr. Massimo Teodoranti, who's been on the show. You both were here. And the work that he's done, Erling Strand from Hessdalen. There are people that are out there doing really groundbreaking research, and that's where we need to go. So how do we create a network of people who are out there with their video cameras, who can use different applications on their phone, collect data, and then make a change?
Well, all of that is really important. The research side of it, the field research side of it is critical. But it's what happens to that data, how it gets written up, and then how it's presented to the greater academic community. And that's where you need a peer-reviewed journal. This is something I've been advocating with my own attempts with the International Association of UAP Researchers that I'm developing. It's an opportunity to bring in these people and to help them document in a way that meets the standards of science, so that the material can be looked at and something determinate can be arrived at. Either it's nonsense or it's not, and go further with it. The study, the field needs a journal, a larger and more comprehensive one. And I'm in the process of trying to bring that into being, but it's a challenge, and it's certainly not something I can do alone, and my own vision isn't broad enough. I need a lot of input to really make this so it serves people well. But and it doesn't preclude MUFON. MUFON could be part of that organization as well. The fact is that if all they do is they generate their own studies and publish them on their own site, then those papers don't end up in a peer-reviewed situation and move further into academia, then things will continue the way they have been. The status quo will be maintained. MUFON will declare, X number of interesting cases every year, and that'll all just go on the website, or go into a MUFON newsletter, and there you have it. It doesn't get out beyond that. And that's the importance of having an association where all these organizations and individuals belong, and where they can bring their documentation it's organized in a scientific fashion so it can be reviewed and then presented in a way that exposes it to further critical review beyond peer review.
Absolutely. And I mean, what do you think the motivations are for, an organization that's been together for 50 years to not want to do this? Is it a monetary thing? Is it ineptitude? I mean, or is there something maybe a little bit deeper there that is taking place that we're seeing this, the data is being pushed somewhere and there is data that is hidden, and that is absolutely true. I know that as state director, there's also, the fact that nothing's been done. Where are the white papers? Why do you think that is?
Well, there's probably several reasons. You could call it institutional sickness if you wanted to, that it's not, that the vision of the organization isn't clear, or the mission statement isn't being adhered to, or isn't clear in its own right. It could be a number of things. I mean, you remember, MUFON started when telephones were mounted on the wall, and when there was no digital anything. And the vision at the time was a network of reports and investigation of reports. And it didn't really have a plan beyond that. And now we find ourselves, 50 years later, in a mature environment that's actually asking us to change, that we have to come up with peer review, that we have to be able to present our data. We've got tons of data, but we have to be able to present it credibly. So how do we do that? We can't keep going the way we've been going, because we'll get more of the same. So it's about adaptation, and all of these things are growing pains. Ethical standards and practices. This is a very important conversation. You had a thread going on your Facebook page for a while that had a number of very important contributions on it. It's a conversation that needs to continue, and it needs to end up being written up. And as soon as it is, I'll adopt it into my own organization. We need a standard and standard of practices as far as ethics go, and then we need a few other things too. Like I said, a place where all of us can submit papers for peer review and publication, no matter what organization we belong to. Because if it just stops on our website, if you're an academic and you want to look at UFOs, where do you go? You can go to somebody's website. Maybe it's a good one, maybe it isn't. But if there was a powerfully managed peer-reviewed journal that dealt with historical cases as well as science cases and so on, then there's a place for them to go. And that's kind of my mission right now that I've got NARCAP in a restructuring mode. So. Right.
And I want to just throw this out there to my listeners. If you don't know about NARCAP, NARCAP is a very important organization that has been around for a long, long time and deals with aviation-related UAP issues, incursions. And the papers on NARCAP are very impressive and something that you should all read, because I found that early on and studied Project Sphere and all of these things so I could learn and grow as a researcher. And I mean, it would be great, if MUFON could produce maybe a fraction of what NARCAP has done.
Erica, in our current incarnation, we published about 40 papers, maybe a little more, and Project Sphere was 20 papers on its own. In addition to that, and so I have firsthand experience in getting papers published, and getting them into a publishable form that could hold up to peer review, and then getting them up on the website. And I've sat and watched them languish, and a lot of people have never heard of us, So this is the problem, If MUFON did publish these papers, what happens to them? Do they arrive at a larger audience, or do they just play to the MUFON membership and the UFO community? Because really the problem here is that we have this little cottage industry of ufology, and everybody's kind of playing along in it, and they're sort of acting like companies and corporations, and none of them are actually operating in the larger world where like we were trying to do with NARCAP, working with the aviation community, the FAA, and pilots, and aviation unions, this kind of thing. Taking the information, carrying the ball into new territory versus kind of rehashing it with UFO believers, and catering to membership. Membership wants to know that their organization is running smoothly, but when you have crises like this, smoothing it over doesn't actually deliver that message. The United CEO found that out when they dragged that poor doctor off the airplane, and the first 3 days of his public commentary didn't serve at all, and it wasn't until he was contrite in a big way that people started even coming around to the message again. And I think it's easy to find yourself in that spot with a large organization. So it's better to be decisive, lead with some elan,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and so you were mentioning the fact that we need to really do some good instrumented research, and I know that you and Dr. Titarani, you have spoken, and he's written for NARCAP, and he's incredible, and I think that his work is something that we need to really take into account. What do you think in the United States that we need to do, and are there specific hotspots that we need to go and really do some good field research?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at this, and I learned this. I've only spoken at 3 conferences in the last 17 years as far as UFO conferences go, because I haven't been playing to the UFO audience. But I did speak at the International UFO Congress here in February. You were there. You spoke also. And what I learned was that there's a lot more to the field than a simple nuts and bolts examination of what's going on, and that there are a number of different aspects of this field that do need to be respected and examined carefully for the information that they're providing. But at the same time, as far as the instrumented side of things goes, Teodorani suggested a diffraction grading effort where everybody attempts to collect spectra data on anomalous lights. And whenever they get it, that they fully document, but that they do the spectra data as well, and that we share this data so that we can understand a little better what these things are burning, what elements are involved in their energetic presentation. So that's one project that we can all kind of help with and get moving forward if people are motivated to do that. And there's some other things too. And the most important thing we can do is share our data. There's nothing wrong with putting your name on your data and then getting it out there. There's something terribly wrong with keeping the data to yourself. And in that sense, we need a sense of community and team playing here that transcends the covetousness of some data. I think you and I personally know a researcher that's keeps it a little close to her chest, Do
you care to name any names? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, we met her at the conference.
I know. I'm kidding. Well, I mean, I can see both sides to the equation there, and I think there are people that, I don't. Sometimes this information and what we learn through this whole process is a bit much, and it's a bit hard to process, and I think it leads down some very serious roads, and I don't know if the average public, is necessarily ready for that, if they need to deal with that. I don't know. But I also know that, as you get stuff out there, though, you get, you're scrutinized by people that don't necessarily know what they're talking about. I mean, I think there's so many layers to this. So is it wise to do what Bigelow did and keep all of the data to himself? Well, he paid for it. He's doing his research, so why shouldn't he? I don't know.
Well, it's a good question. I fall on the side of transparency. I don't like aliases. I like transparency. I like to know who I'm talking to, and I like to understand where the information came from, and so on. And so in that sense, I prefer to see everything published. That's how you make a field thrive. That's how it becomes viable. That's how you create a research arc. You get things going. People put their names on the research, and then you publish it. And then other people look at that research and they add to it, or they parse into it and find exceptions to it, or or learn other things entirely because of it. But it's there as a foundation for others to look at. You're constantly bringing something to the table, and I think this is really important if we want to get to the bottom of this. Now, if you're somebody like Bob Bigelow, what you're trying to do most likely is find the cheapest way, the cheapest dollar cost per pound to move something into orbit. And if you think somebody else has already resolved that problem with anti-gravity or some such thing, then maybe that's what it is about industrial secrets, But I think for a healthy field, a healthy research community, we need to be talking and sharing our data, and we need to be doing it in a peer-reviewed environment, so that we get the majority and the minority reports. So you get to study, and then you allow 3 months for counterpositions to be published as well, and you publish the whole mess. And so then you have a dialogue around this thing that actually is relevant. This is the way it's done in journal Nature and journal Science, and there's no reason that ufology can't stand up to this also. And that's how you move a research arc forward. And then when these difficult questions come up, they arise specifically because you've got a research arc that makes them relevant now. It's like, for example, Abraham Loeb published in 2014. He published a paper called "Habitability in the Earliest Epoch of the Universe," and in it, through some complex math, if you're a proponent of expansion theory, he proved that the universe was a nice, cozy 73 degrees Fahrenheit throughout. And this is very relevant he meant within 15 to 20 million years of the Big Bang. So what this means is that it was warm, liquid water everywhere. You didn't need a sun, so life could have started long, long, long ago. And that there could be the implications for extraterrestrial intelligences are probably more than we can imagine. All right, but if you don't have that paper out there where people are thinking about this, then they're not stimulated by it. So if Avi's got this in his notebook and he's not sharing it with anybody, then what good does it do? But now that we have it, we can do something with this. We can build on this foundation, and that's the purpose of publication and community. In this field, and I think that's really kind of lacking. We don't have a lot of community in this field. We know a lot of people, and some of us are trying to kind of get everybody to play nice, but in terms of actually banding together and picking a direction and moving in it, that's not really what's going on here in a big way.
No, not by a long shot. But I think it's also, most of us in this field are here because of our own personal longing to find answers to experiences. And so there's, you come into it with that, and in a way, that's coming into it with a bias. And then, you have, it's just the whole thing. There's so much to hold into account. And I think, the more time I spend in this, the more I think it's a dangerous road to go down to be pushing the extraterrestrial hypothesis, because I think there's so many things going on that we can't put our eggs in one basket, and it's putting the cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart, whichever it is. It's doing something.
Well, but at the same time, Eric, it's important to remember that at least with certain categories of unidentified aerial phenomena, that the U.S. government in 2 of its studies came out with an estimate of the situation, being that it was likely that some of these phenomena were incursions by non-human intelligences in their technology, and I think Hoyt Vandenberg was noted as for destroying one of these reports, actually. So it isn't off the table, but it probably isn't all there is that's going on. We have to be careful and let the data talk and share it, so that we can get to the answers and find out, whether these balls of light we're seeing are related to UFOs or whether there's something else, and all the rest of the questions we have.
And I think with the ball of light thing, Ted, this is the place that you and I, this is where we really want to research, and you've done a lot of that with NARCAP, because that is, in my opinion, the most common type of phenomena that we're seeing, and this definitely has a potential impact on aviation safety. And in other areas where you see these nocturnal lights, they can behave in, or they act in an aggressive manner. You know, I mean, I had a case that I had a long time ago where this object was following a car and literally pushed the car off the road into a ditch. And so you've got cases like this, and you go to the Yakima area and look at some of the interactions there, which appear to be dangerous and a bit aggressive, and we have to take this seriously. And I think it's really a disservice to have different researchers, quote unquote researchers, who don't take this seriously.
Well, you know, I agree. You know, the ball of light phenomena are very interesting. There, like you said, there is this component of behaviors involved. We certainly, I studied 120 aviation cases involving unidentified aerial phenomena, and out of those, 44 of those cases presented as lights or objects that could be considered spherical.
And of course, I've got to cut you off right there, right at the good part. I'm Erica Lukes. I'm here with Ted Roe. We're going to take a break. This is KCOR. We will see you on the other side of the break.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the second half of UFO Classified. I'm Erica Lukes, always happy to be here, and all of the usual suspects are in chat room tonight from all over the world. I can't thank you enough for spending a portion of your Friday night here with me, listening to what I'm presenting. I'm hoping to give you a little bit of knowledge so we can move forward in a positive manner, and we can also hopefully call out some unethical and bad behavior that is doing great disservice to our field, to research, to allowing the public to take this issue seriously, and it should be taken very seriously. I am here with my colleague Ted Roe, who is the executive director of NARCAP. NARCAP has done a significant amount of work with regard to aviation safety and UAP sightings. Some of my favorite papers are actually on NARCAP's site, which one of my all-time favorites is Project Sphere, and that was an incredibly important work, and I want to thank you, Ted, for doing that. And I can't imagine how difficult it is to try to keep in, to organize this, to get people to do things, because that's a painstaking job.
Well, Dr. Haynes was our editor-in-chief, he did a bang-up job of, refereeing these papers and getting them into some order. And of course, it was my job too to move all this forward and get it publishable, and then get it onto the websites and get it out there. But we created that study it literally between Scotland and Japan, with about 20 contributors and or about 15 contributors and over 20 papers. And it was an exercise for sure, but it proved that a virtual organization can put together a pretty good study. And so we use the internet to our best advantage, I think, with that study in particular.
So what were some of the things that you found with that study?
Well, basically what we did was we just approached a number of different aspects of spherical UAP. We looked at the mechanical aspects of them, what it takes for a sphere to fly, what the radar cross-section of a sphere looks like and how detectable they are. Spherical UAP that have appeared in the literature that are related to aviation cases, and more. So we examined a lot of different aspects of spherical UAP, and we learned quite a bit. I think we decided that they were energetic radiators. They give off probably alternating magnetic fields that affect navigation and communication systems. We learned that of 56 cases involving concurrent effects on avionic systems on aircraft, all of them involved balls of light. That was Dominic Weinstein and Dick Haynes did that study. So then we took that all a little bit further. I had mentioned that in my own paper I had found that by examining 120 aviation safety-related cases involving unidentified aerial phenomena, that 44 of them involved what presented as spherical lights or objects. So it's a significant portion of the study involves these things, and whether they're objects that are masked by light or whether they're actually balls of light, probably, I don't know, might be both. The answers aren't there yet, and a lot of people are putting in some work on this now. Charles Lamoureux, as you know, with his movie that he's coming out with here recently, and others. Allison Cruz, there are other researchers that are doing their best to take a shot at these unusual balls of light.
And that's wonderful. But, and I think that all of us have kind of created this network, where we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and like you say, both of those names you mentioned, they are out there doing field research on a nightly basis. Right. They're going to get out there. Do you think that when there are these balls of light that oftentimes come in close proximity to the witness, do you think that there are some health effects that are to take place because of exposure?
That's a really careful consideration. It's really important. I've watched these things go through very arid areas, places that are really, really dry with lots of fuel plants, dried like creosote bushes and this kind of thing, and none of them seem to be lit up by it. Detecting them, depending on what you're using to detect them, they don't seem to give strong signals. So I have concerns only because I don't have a better understanding of their physicality. I don't know that they're dangerous, but we can't be sure until we can get some good instrumented studies, some documentation up and debated.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Dr. Strand, or excuse me, not Dr. Strand, Mr. Strand, when he presented at the International UFO Congress in February, when we were there, he mentioned that they were doing spectral analysis of some of the light that they were catching, and they were coming across the element scandium, I think it is.
Yes.
So, right. So here are important clues that are cropping up out of research. Why scandium? Why not magnesium? Why not something else that we recognize? Why scandium? You know what I mean? Why is that appearing in the spectral data on this stuff? And this should be debated. What does this mean? And then go further with it. This is how we get from point A to point Z in this study. You know, he writes a paper about this, says, hey, we found scandium, you know, let's talk about this, you know. And it was really kind of disheartening because his presentation had one of the more anemic audiences in the during the conference. You know, there weren't that many people in the audience really watching this. And here he was with actual real information, you know.
And both you and I made comments. I mean, I think you and I we were just looking around with our mouths hanging open because to me that was the most important talk of the entire conference. And and then you've got Colonel Halt, who's standing room only out the door, and you just think, holy cow. You know, we're missing the point here. We're getting caught up by the sensationalism of this topic and that one golden case that is now so bogged down with ego and personality disorders, whatever, that you can't see through the truth. And here you have 30 years of data. They've identified at least 4 different types of light phenomena that appears to behave intelligently and responds. I mean, seriously?
Yeah.
We're looking at Rendlesham when we could be looking at 30 years of data?
Yes, and that's what I'm talking about. And we need to make a venue for him to publish this stuff, and for his students, now that they've got a grant, you know, they're going to have data too, you know, and same with Massimo, who's done just brilliant work in this whole area, leadership level. Dr. Teodorani. This is where we need to go. Okay, along with good, solid historical analysis, the direction is into instrumented research, and instruments are becoming effectively available. You can get night vision, you can get infrared, you can get high definition cameras, you can get time lapse, you can, you know, on and on and on, and it's affordable. Plus, there's editing so that you can get in there and actually look at these things and try and understand what it was that your instrument saw. And there's other things too. RF receivers doing searches along certain bands of radio signal may detect things moving through the atmosphere. There's a lot of different ideas out there, and they need to be worked through. And then that information needs to be presented and debated. That's where we need to go.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I just want to mention too, sometimes though, because we're so narrowly focused, especially in the scientific community, on one particular topic, that we don't look at all of the data. And in many of these cases, in these hotspots around the world, we have quote unquote paranormal phenomena taking place. We have soil displacement where these quote unquote cookie cutters, sections of soil are being lifted out and placed, 100 feet away. And you're also hearing underground noises. You have, it goes on and on and on, but it is the same type of thing taking place in places like Hessdalen, places like Skinwalker Ranch, Marfa, Texas, the Brown Mountain. You've got places, Yakima, all over the world where you're seeing all of this. And I think that we get so narrowly focused that we can't do that because we're missing valuable pieces of the puzzle.
Well, I would agree 100%. I was sequestered inside of a nuts and bolts organization studying only aviation cases. And we didn't talk about aliens because we didn't talk to our pilots about them. We didn't talk to the reporters about them. We talked about what they saw and what might have been detected on radar and so on, what might have been talked about on radio. And so we were in this very kind of narrow situation. I constantly found myself chafing because I knew there was more to the study than this. And I think that if we don't look, I was, you went to the site with me out in Arizona, okay, after the conference, and you saw what that place is like. And I really think that first light we saw that first night was probably what we were looking for out there, one of them. But we have to go there. They're there. There are these places where these things are happening, and we needed to turn the instruments on them and do the work. And And then there are all around the world. I think Dr. Haynes informally documented 70 places around the world where there had been claims of recurrent light phenomena. And these are a good place to start, find out if they're related to the rest of it or not.
And does he have that published anywhere?
That list?
Yes.
No, it's informal. It's probably in NARCAP intellectual properties somewhere.
Okay. Well, that would be good to see. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, just throwing that out there.
Well, that's a good job. Thanks for throwing that out there. That's true. We need to. We need to get all this data in one place, because the bottom line is there are people like myself who, I'm not a scientist. I'm a business owner. I am an artist, a singer, blah, blah, blah. But I'm trying my best to dive into this whole scientific realm feet first. And to me, I want access to the data, because I might have an idea or a path to go down that, Mr. Scientist over there wouldn't necessarily have access, or he would be looking in a different direction. And I think all of us can make change and add valuable input into this.
Oh, I agree. And you don't discount the value of citizen scientists. Logic doesn't care if you have a PhD or not. What matters is that you're using it. And like in my case, I'm not a field researcher. I am learning how to be a field researcher, and there's so much to it. And it's just amongst many different hats that I've had to wear working in this field. But the fact is that, yeah, you can contribute. There's room for people who are willing to put in their time and their money and go and do the work, go find the places where these things happen, document. You will see unusual things if you do your work. I was shocked myself when I was introduced to places like the place I took you to. I had no idea that there were such places, but there are. And they deserve a much closer look by motivated next generation researchers with their cameras and writing up their papers afterwards, so that we can see what they saw and that the data can be shared and it can become part of a body of work.
Absolutely. And I've talked to Charles and you and Jeff and other people about, developing some protocols. So all of the people all over the world that are doing this can just have, okay, here's what you need to do. So go out there tonight, get it done. You can access a lot of stuff on your phone. And that is such a great tool now. And the younger generation, they clearly know how to use their phones. So we could we could take this to a whole new level. And now the fact that we can share stuff within a matter of, a couple minutes, it's really an important time. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to mobilize people that are out there that have invested in equipment, and we need to come together as a community and make some change.
Well, I agree. I want to get this field study in motion on this site out here in Arizona that we were working on, and I want to do it twice a year at least and bring people out there. Maybe come up with some kind of a process where new folks who've invested equipment, who are really trying to do the work, can come out and practice there, in a place where something very well could happen. I'd like to see all of that, but most importantly, I'd like to see whatever data is there written up. It doesn't help to just make a video and then put it on YouTube. That doesn't help anybody. Well, judge for yourself. Is it a UFO? Well, for Pete's sake, if you don't give me any context, how can I give you any feedback? And for some people that serves them because they're there for clickbait. But other people actually have data, but they're just putting it up there haphazardly, and they're not respecting what it is and how to share it. And I'd really like to kind of move that process forward. I think it's really important.
It is, and I think while we're encouraging other people to get out there and collect data, I think it's important to realize that as excited as we are, we have to step back and understand that there's simply more to this than just looking for a UFO. I mean, you need to get in there with the journal and write everything down meticulously. I mean, I always have an audio recorder next to me, and so I'm verbally talking about things. I have a couple different cameras. I have, I'm trying to document as much because there's so many things that go on in your immediate environment that need to be looked at and analyzed. And so you really have to go in there with all of your senses on heightened alert.
Well, yeah, and on top of that, you need to understand your technology. You have to become a technician and understand how your camera looks at reality and what it might be seeing and how it might see things and whether or not that's going to serve you out there, or do you need something better or, or of a different nature. And how to take a photograph using diffraction grading, this kind of thing. All of these, develop your skill set and be a technician, because that's really, being a technician and a documentarian is kind of the key here. And yeah, audio recording, video recording, overall video recording. My ideal situation would have a constant video camera, probably triangulated around the site, and then our own specific cameras for when phenomena or suspected phenomena manifest, along with our IR detectors and everything else, our EM field meters and all the rest of it.
Right. And I want to say we've got a question from the chat room. Dead Center Soul, he just said, what kinds of data are being recommended? And, I think this is interesting, and I want to talk to you about this, Ted, before we go on break. Ray Stanford was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about collecting data, and he said that right now, as cool and fun as infrared technology is, it's not really the way to go, because that can't be really taken seriously in the scientific realm. And I think that's a good point. I mean, I think that if you look at what James Bunnell from all of his MARFA studies of Erling Strand, I mean, they're all using just a DSLR camera, and they've got diffraction grading, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah, they're using other instruments too. I think at one point they were using a radar up there, and they got some very intriguing data when Teodorani was running the team in 2001, I think. But yeah, this is what a research association can do, is we can come together and talk about what are effective modalities and strategies and what are less effective ones. Personally, I think I like Charles' approach, where you have visual spectra, infrared, and thermal all going at the same time, and recording all at the same time. If you're going to, so you not only have optical, but you have infrared and you have heat. And in this way, now you've got three ways to show that it was there, if it was.
Right.
So anyway, community and talking about this is really important.
It absolutely is, and I agree with that. And I think that, assembling kind of a team in your neck of the woods, like I have done with Jeff and Dave Rosenfeld and things, people who have different ideas to bring to the table, but who have been out there and done, especially, Dave, significant research out there in the field, which is what we need to be doing. I mean, I think it is incredibly important as well to look at historical archives and to have an understanding of this. And I think that it's important to look at current cases, but we can't sit behind our computer screens. We have to get out there and be active. Okay, we're gonna go to break really quickly, and then we're gonna try to get the communications issues that we've both been having tonight figured out. And I am Erica Lukes. This is KCOR UFO Classified. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
Woven throughout the universe are keys to a hidden message, awaiting a voice that can decipher their coded meaning, a cosmic connection to the cosmos. Tune in to the KCOR Digital Radio Network at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern for Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection. Cosmic Connection with astrologers Caroline Lynch and Merlin Wizard. Your weekly astrology reading is but a phone call away. So call Cosmic Connection Sunday, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and get your free reading today. Cosmic Connection with Caroline Lynch and Merlin Wizard, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, we take the KCOR Digital Radio Network off the grid and go deep inside the Paranormal Vault. Jump on the elevator and come take the ride down the rabbit hole of reality with BK Mojave and The Watcher as they unlock the vault and dust off some of their classified paranormal case files even the government doesn't know about. The Paranormal Vault, Mondays at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. This is the one show our secret government fears will speak the truth.
That's good. Turn your radio up.
I love it. All the music I want to hear.
This is my station.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the celestial highway and travel at the speed of light. Into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, for Hyperspace, the one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into UFO Classified. I'm always happy to be here and spend my Friday evenings with you. Stick around for a great night on KCOR. Tina Marie is up with Restricted Airspace, and then hopefully, weather permitting, Hyperspace with Solaris Blue Raven will be on. You can find my website at ufoclassified.com. Find me on Facebook. Send me a message, and if you like the show, make a small donation, because that is much appreciated. I have Ted Roe here tonight, who is the executive director of NARCAP, and NARCAP is an important organization. They have done significant research with regard to aviation safety and UAP sightings. And Ted has also got the International Association of UAP Research that is in the formative stages, and that will be addressing new ways to research and get the information out there to academia and the scientific community. So, Ted, welcome back, and thank you for subbing for Chris O'Brien, who was supposed to be here tonight. You filled in, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm sorry Chris couldn't make it. I would have liked to have heard what he had to say, but I'm happy to step up.
Well, that was, I love it, and I always enjoy talking with you. You have so many things to say, and we started out the show talking about some of the dysfunction in the UFO community, specifically MUFON, and the lack of effective leadership. And I definitely think this is something that is near and dear to my heart because of my own personal experiences and seeing other people in the field who've been degraded by the lack of ethical and professional standards. And I really, truly believe, and I'm going to go back to this, that we need to work together, and we need to call out researchers and organizations who don't behave in that ethical or professional way. So that's my take on that one. But then we also talked a bit about how this research, how we're looking at the UAP and how we're going to the different hotspots, and we want to do we want to get instruments in there, teach people how to collect data. Where else do you think that we need to go with regard to this?
Well, like I've said, we need to teach them how to collect data, and then we need to teach them how to present it so that they can share it, and that it will serve as foundation for further work. And so we need to create a sense of community and trust and respect and an opportunity for peer review so that people can look at the stuff and work it through without abusing each other. I think that's really important. Right now, the field is really kind of wild, wild west, and quite a few of us, if you've been in this field for any length of time, you will end up in a scandal of some kind. There will be something that will come along, and you might misspeak, or you misunderstood, or you might find yourself at cross purposes with somebody who's less ethical, or whatever. But you can end up in a bad situation here, and so you want to be really careful about understanding what's going on around you. But even more importantly, we need to change it. We need, like you say, we need standards and practices, ethical guidelines, organizations and associations, so that people are a little bit insulated. So you're not just slugging everything out on social media. A lot of these conversations we're having, we shouldn't be having on Facebook. They should be taking place, as intellectual, scientific debate, and in a proper environment for it.
Absolutely. And that brings me into another point. I mean, you see these groups of people that band together and almost form this organization of little bullies that like to go in there and undermine. And I'm thinking specifically of a person who doesn't have the fortitude to actually give us his real name, and some of the negative comments that he and his group have made and are continuing to make. I mean, I think that kind of behavior needs to be called out, especially when people are trying to do the right thing and trying to prove, trying to debunk each other's cases. I mean, if you want to be scientific, then let's be scientific, and let's vet our sources. And I think, this Wild West, as you say, on social media is ridiculous. And it, to me, having, Kurt Collins specifically, who wrote some very untruthful things about me personally, it was interesting to me because I sat back and looked at that and said, wait a minute, this fellow who claims to be a good researcher doesn't even have the wherewithal to call me and get my side of the story, which any good researcher would do. And yet he's one of the leaders on the Roswell Research Group. And we're supposed to take that seriously. So to me, that puts in question all the other things that these people have done when they're not doing that both ways.
Well, it's true. I've been on the business end of some of this stuff too, as you know, and you would expect that people would vet their sources, like you said, and but nobody ever came and talked to me before they wrote an article. They never asked me what I thought about it, or it or how things came to be, or any of it. That it was very partisan kind of situation, and I think really that we can disagree about things, but do it with professional standards and ethics, where it doesn't just reduce to a fight. But again, I don't think that can happen on Facebook. I don't think that I don't care what kind of page you put together. I mean, the problem I had on Facebook originated in a closed page where conversations weren't to be shared outside of there. Never mind that what it was allegedly I'm accused of saying or doing, I didn't do. So and yet it leaked out through a closed page and out into the field, and had a moment there with it, and it can happen. I think it just is a real reminder that social media is not where we solve these cases.
No, it isn't. We need to be careful. I mean, there is that bully contingent, and I think they're just in there strictly to stroke their egos, and it's not really doing anybody any good. And so I encourage people who are getting into this field to go to places like the Barry Greenwood Archives, like NARCAP, like Project 1947, to dig into this and to stay off some of these UFO updates or social media sites, because it can get very confusing and you can be led in the wrong direction instead of coming into this looking purely at the body of work and the research, like Project Hessdalen, and so we just need to definitely caution people to do good work, and NICAP as well. NICAP has incredible resources for all of us. So there are good places to look, and just be careful of what groups you run with on Facebook.
Well, that's the whole thing. Don't, if you're interested in the field, study the field, but don't study it on Facebook. You want to have an intellectual debate on Facebook? Well, good luck. You might find somebody who's of your caliber that can hold their own with it, or you might come across somebody who's just waiting to be really cruel, who's mentally ill. There's no buffer, there's no filter, there's no professional standards. So you're at the most base level when you're in social media. Otherwise, you create a closed communication system. You create a buffered environment where people can do their work, and where you can control the conversation internally, and whatever's discussed externally is on the other side of a firewall. It's not where it's influencing your organization, and it has nothing to do with what's actually going on inside of your organization.
Right.
And I just these people that you're talking about and that I had to deal with were all refugees from the MUFON page. They were all kicked off the MUFON page for egregious behavior, for chewing up new visitors and this kind of stuff, and it's one thing to have there's the pro side of any argument and a con side of any argument, which there's nothing wrong with that. But when it's personal, when it's abusive, when it seems to be serving purposes other than an intellectual, friendly conversation debate, then it needs to be put in check.
Absolutely, and I sat back there and watched when I was still involved in MUFON on the social media Facebook page, which was, I will tell you, it was really disgusting to watch, to see the lack of integrity, to see the fact that some of these basically bullies had gotten in there, skeptics, that just wanted to build themselves up by tearing other people down. And I can't tell you how many times I had different witnesses to things reach out to me, and they had been so shamed by the admins, and not all of them, but one particular admin, that they never wanted to report a sighting or talk about what they'd been through. And that was mortifying to me. And then you also had admins dealing with people that were allegedly abductees, and these admins had absolutely no experience, weren't field investigators, and had no business dealing with people with these issues. And then you had the bullying aspect, and it was like, wow. So that was the one good thing, and I will say that I was the bee in MUFON's bonnet to try to get a hold of that, as they should have, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah.
But that's something that we need to be very cognizant of when we're searching for information. And, again, I know I just said this.
I think I'm sorry, Eric, but, I mentioned earlier when I was talking to you how interesting it was that a lot of these very same people are the ones that are really speaking out against this situation with Mr. Ventre and MUFON. They're the ones that are really calling for this guy to be held accountable for his horrible commentary, and yet these are people who said terrible things to me.
Well, I think that there are people like, Greg Bishop, Lauren Cutts. There are some people there. Karen Dolan has been, Ryan Sprague. I mean, all those people are people I respect, and they have all stood up and said things, and I think that's great. And then, of course, you get Kurt Collins, who just has to be in there because he likes to be in there. But I think that there are really important people standing up for it, so it's not just the usual contingent.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, like I said, I just think it's interesting that these same people that were so vicious in their own behavior and the things that they say, so unchecked in the way they behave, that they're out there, decrying this other person who was not careful with what he said either. But anyway, I'd like to see some changes in all of this. But I think the way you do this is you insulate, and you control your presence in social media. And you conduct your organization outside of social media, and you create your community outside of social media.
Absolutely, but you still need to be cognizant of what's taking place on social media, especially because there is, that younger generation, and that's one thing I saw with MUFON is that they were so oblivious to what was taking place on social media when they could have been using that for positive things, when they could have, that's where the younger generation is turning. So there is, while research, a lot of it needs to be done off of social media, it's still an important tool.
Well, there's no question. I use social media to keep track of trends and what people are thinking and saying and so on. But there's a right way and a wrong way to go about it, and I think there's a lot of I don't know. I wouldn't get into much debate on Facebook. I wouldn't commit myself to any arguments without really knowing who I was talking to. And again, you are public, no matter how they word anything. So you want to be a little careful about all of that, and understand that there's some nutcases out there. You want to really watch who you talk to.
Absolutely, and two, also, I think that some people really want to, and I've seen this with people that are involved in the field. They feel like in order for them to be credible, they have to glom onto that little skeptics group. Because it's like that's the and I don't get that. So I think you also have to be careful when you're researching this to come into it without a bias, and it's important not to go down the road of the true believer and worship whatever this is, or go down the road of I'm going to be a skeptic and debunk everything.
Well, I agree with you there. You really want to just watch the cliques. There's a lot of them, a lot of different little groups of people that gather together, and some are really dysfunctional. And you want to learn to recognize the signs and bail as soon as you can see it. And you don't need to appease debunkers. What you need to do is make sure your logic is strong and that your presentation is clear and that you understand what it is you're trying to say. You can engage debunkers. You can have a debate if it's a debate, but I wouldn't really waste a lot of my time on it. And I certainly wouldn't do it on social media. It's interesting, out of the 40-plus papers that I've published for NARCAP, not one person published a counter study, engaged in a debate on any of our studies,
Well, that would take too much time away from Facebook, so why would they ever do that?
Right. There were some informal conversations, and this very group attempted to call out, some of my studies with NARCAP, but I wouldn't engage. I told them, fine, you have to go to the witnesses, get the data, and start from there, not with me. You need to get the data from the same source I got it from, and then work it, and then see where we end up. Maybe we meet in the middle, maybe we don't. But I'm not going to just go get the data for you and then let you point out what you think is right or wrong about it and do it all on social media. You got to go write your paper and do your presentation. That's how we elevate the study. And in 17 years of doing this, it hasn't happened once. Okay, so that's the difference between true debate and egos. And there's a ton of egos here and not too much in the way of true debate, where people are really trying to get to the facts and say, okay, well, maybe this is a little bit right, but here's where it's wrong, and I think it's right. If we go this way, then we can understand all this a little better. That's not what's happening. So anyway, that's what you hope for in a healthy environment, intellectual environment. But what we have here is not that, at least not at the level of social media. And go there at your own risk. You never know what kind of unstable personalities you're dealing with, and I've run into a few of them, no question. And I think you have.
Nuh-uh. Yeah, well, yes. Oh, Lord have mercy. I've definitely had. I think we both have had some interesting experiences, and I mean, we both know that group of people is still alive and well and being as nasty as ever, and that's unfortunate. And I just encourage people to be smart, to know that if somebody's not willing to verify their identity, you shouldn't be taking them too seriously. That's my own personal thought. And I think that we need to be respectful. We need to have ethics, and we absolutely need to hold researchers and organizations accountable for bullying, for unethical behavior, and for not taking a stand and making a positive change in the field.
Well, I think so. But that again, social media is it's the mob, it's the crowd, and that's not where we're going to get that work done. We have to organize and insulate and elevate the conversation. And by doing so, then we can have proper debate, then there can be proper disagreements, and if we discover that there's nothing to it at all and everybody's just bolting at shadows, then we'll get there. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen, but if we want to resolve this, that's how we resolve it. We focus on resolving it, not with these egomaniacs that feel they have something to prove. I found myself in a difficult spot here in January with the Chilean team's announcement on a case that they had that they felt was anomalous, which even I had just untrained eye looked to me like an airliner making a fuel dump, and that turned out to be exactly what it was. But without, if they would have talked to everybody, if they would have brought this information up, they wouldn't have made the mistake of putting that out there and hurting their reputation.
Right.
And in that sense, I think this very crowd of debunkers that we're talking about here actually did a pretty good job of, kind of leading the vanguard against that one and pretty much showing that it wasn't relevant. They've actually done a pretty good job debunking a number of cases that I find myself agreeing with, but at the same time, the way they treat people and the way they conduct their day-to-day behavior is deplorable, and bullying, like you said, it's boorish and trollish and it's wrong, and they have a long body count behind them, so people do need to be careful out there.
Absolutely. And just be smart. I mean, I think that's the whole thing. Just be smart and turn to good resources and understand that there are people that are willing to pull you in and they're not necessarily, sane. and there is a lot of, there's really interesting behavior in this field. And, I know that there are two different factions. You've got the true believers that drink the Kool-Aid, that nothing is malevolent, Stephen Greer, kind of thing. Or, you've got the other faction, the hardcore debunkers. And I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle, but I think that we have to approach this from an unemotional standpoint, and it has to be without bias, and I hope we can do that at some point. What do you think?
Well, wouldn't that be nice? knowledge is a sloppy process. It has been all along. Science has always been. There was an argument about whether you could survive being on a train that was going 30 miles an hour. And there was an argument about whether gorillas existed or not, and so on and so on. And every step of the way, proof had to come along. And I don't agree that extraordinary claims need extraordinary proof. I agree that claims arise from proof. So follow the proof and have the courage to call it what it is, if that's what it is. I agree. A healthy debate is appropriate, but a healthy debate, should be. It doesn't take place on a battlefield. It takes place in amongst intelligent people who understand that the goal is to present clear knowledge. It's to get to some truth, not to tear people down or abuse them and feed your own ego. And I've seen an awful lot of this. There's a lot of it going on, and I just want I want people to move beyond that. But the way you do that is by getting serious. Take the subject seriously. If you take it seriously, then pick the hills to fight on, and those hills are not in social media. The hills to fight and die on are when you've done your research and you've got data and you've written it up, and now you want somebody to read it, and do something with it. That's where your fight is. It's not with these goobers that are trying to make something for themselves out there.
Well, and I will throw this out there. I invite any of those people to come on the show and have an adult discussion about things. And I always think it's important to hear both sides to any story. I invite Jan Harzan or Roger Marsh to come on the show as well to talk about MUFON and some of the current political dysfunction that we're seeing in MUFON. But it is important that we address these issues and not sweep them under the rug, because we've seen 50 years of research that is important research that has not made it out there, and it needs to. And we need to address the way we're dealing with this subject in a big way. I believe we can do that, and there are good people, like you, Ted, like again, Ryan Sprague. I think the world of him. Greg Bishop. There's some great people who are doing good things without bias, and we're going to continue to do that. Next week on my show, I have the pleasure of having one of my friends, Ruben Uriarte, who works with MUFON, and I adore Ruben. And again, he's one of those people involved in MUFON that I just have a tremendous respect for. I want you to get in there on Facebook and find me, send me a message, throw something up on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter, and also go to UFOclassified.com, and I'll be releasing show details and hopefully some good research. But just make sure you keep an open mind, you keep one foot on the ground, and look in places for good work that is not the field of ufology. I'm Erica Lukes. Have a safe weekend. I'll see you next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at UFOclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.